Looks like we're live.
All right, I guess we're live on YouTube, Walt.
Okay, yes, okay, I see the icon. Thank you for giving me the wake-up call.
Yep.
Okay, then I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Board of Directors of the Bishop Area Wastewater Authority this Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020. The time now is 8:10 in the morning. The first item on our agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask you to all stand and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll take the lead on that. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
Under
with
God,
liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you.
Oh, what did I lose?
So just to reiterate, we've got Ward Simmons on board, Destin DeShawn, Stephen Machovi, Ron Phillips. We have Jen Krafchek here to provide any information that we might need. And then Michelle is taking the lead for our support work. So thank you all for joining us. Do we have, oh, we've got Ron Stone on board. Didn't mean to leave you out there, Ron. Do we have anybody else on this?
That's all right.
Do we have anybody else in the meeting? Well, it sounds like that's what we have. The next item would be our public comment. Since there are no members of the public present, we can move on to agenda item number 5, that being the interim budget discussion.
Just to check, did anybody submit a comment in writing, Michelle?
Thank you, Stephen.
No comments in writing, and I have email up right now, and there's nothing in.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Moving on to the interim budget discussion. Just reading from the agenda, as part of the process of forming the Joint Powers Authority, we must establish an interim budget within 120 days of signing the agreement. So in order to have that ready by our October meeting, we're going to be discussing this today. I know that Destin has put a lot of work into it and just sent us the spreadsheet. Destin, do you want to take the lead on this discussion?
Sure. So kind of as I said in the staff report, obviously this was part of the process with that October 23rd date. So due to the fact this is an interim budget, and this coming spring, the BAWA will begin the process of establishing a budget for the 21-22 fiscal year. I felt it appropriate to only include the very most basic line items. With so many timeline uncertainties, such as the purchase of land from DWP, as well as design and construction of an irrigation system, it's far too early to try to establish a budget for such items. The basic line items include insurance, legal costs, funds for staff time, and probably importantly for discussion, I think, is I also created a line item for professional services, which would cover the testing of the wastewater discharge and the monitoring wells. It seems like it's starting to become the appropriate time that we start sharing equally all the wells and the discharge of our wastewater. And I think that's more along the lines of what Lahontan's seen this group is going to be doing. So with that, and obviously, I guess we're doing this early so that we once again need to take this to the individual board or councils of the appropriate board members and have it approved by them as well. So looking at it, I want to thank the board. Really helped me out with the legal part of this. So we came up with quarterly Zoom meetings. Sorry. Question, Ron?
No, I'm just breaking up. You're breaking up a lot, but that might be my phone service. No problem.
He was lamenting that his connection is terrible and that it's breaking up a lot.
I know, I often wonder sometimes if the WebEx or Microsoft option of this is better of a Zoom meeting. So anyhow, I'll go back to what I was saying. Ward helped me out a lot with this legal fees side of it. And so the basics of that are Zoom meetings, 3 of them times $825 a meeting. And then the miscellaneous legal fees for startup. And you know, we hope that we are being more than conservative on this. And Ward suggested $20,000 to get us through this first year of everything that we'll need to do. And it seemed reasonable to me. I don't know what you all think. Okay. Insurance. So this one has been a little elusive so far. I've had several meetings, had a Zoom meeting the other day with California Joint Powers, and hoping, I'm sure in the next 2 weeks I'll have another meeting with them, but they really couldn't come with any strong numbers. They needed to kind of see this budget brought forward for them. So I asked them, I said, just give me high numbers for the 3 things that we're going to need. And as you can see there, it's roughly $31,000. I think that's going to be well in excess of what we need, but I wanted to be safe. You know, we don't have to spend it. The professional services comes in with the quarterly monitoring wells and monthly nitrogen samples of 10.4. And then staff time, as you'll see on there. You know, I hope it'll slow down a little bit for me. I've been spending a lot of time trying to work with phone calls from the regulators, Ward and I working together, putting together budgets and meetings. So put administrator at 20,000, finance, that would be Jenny, maybe a little bit of Ron at $1,000, and a board clerk for Michelle at 4 meetings at 4 hours a meeting, 2 hours to prepare, some time for minutes, and then her meeting as a meeting time as well. Something that I need to add on to here that may or may not happen as a result of a phone call with LaHontan and Jay Cass on Friday could be permitting fees for BAWA for the discharge permit, which is with I got the latest, they just had their meeting to update fees. It would be $2,848 for that. So we're looking at roughly almost just shy of $90,000 in this first year's budget. And with that, I'd open up for discussion and anything that could have been missed on there. And I should add quickly though, as I know, it looks like we're missing a spot, which irrigation design, I put $0 in there. We've been meeting with NRCS, and there seems like some real possibility that we may get this design and construction, or at least materials, paid for through NRCS. The design services are something they offer, but I have a later staff item a little bit about the NRCS, but I wanted to point out that we did not put any money for design or anything, because right now it looks like they're going to come up with that funding for us.
Destin, a couple of quick questions, if I may. There's a Sierra Analytical line with nothing on it as well. What does that pertain to?
So, and I'm sorry, I should have done so Sierra Analytical is our lab, and then underneath that would be quarterly monitor wells and monthly nitrogen. I guess sorry, I should have just put lab on there.
Oh, that's fine. So some general thoughts that I have is that, as you mentioned, there is a lot of uncertainty right now with regards to how much the irrigation is going to cost and how much any sort of land deal with DWP is going to be. And so I think it makes sense to definitely not include that in this preliminary budget. So I think that's a good thing. I do think we should start doing joint testing since I mean, seems to be absolutely no reason to put that off, especially since now that we are an actual entity, Lahontan is going to come after us anyway. So we should, I think it makes sense to have the joint testing be a part of this. And I guess the other thing you mentioned about adding the discharge permit, in principle, both entities right now have their own individual discharge permit, right?
Correct,
And so,
yes.
in principle, adding it to here will clear it up from each of our individual budgets, right? So that seems like a reasonable thing to do.
So I guess it's all in budget, so I might as well talk a little bit about my discussion on Friday. So first off, it finally hit home to Jay Cass that we are not one entity from top to bottom, including collection all the way through discharge. I sent him a copy of the JPA agreement. I think Walt has told him, I have told him on numerous occasions that that's the way it was going to be. Well, when he got the agreement, that's what caused him to start calling me. What is going on? You guys aren't one agency. And it was a long, actually, I've never had a 2-hour phone call with a regulator before. But the long, I'm getting back to roundabout to what you're saying, Stephen, is he now is in the conundrum that now he has to do 3 permits. So you have a separate permit for the plants. Then you have so each of the plants will still have their permit. And then he'll have to write a 3rd permit for the discharge of the wastewater. And it's a little bit confusing. They're not even sure how to do it yet. It looks like we'll probably end up with a recycled water permit, and will be the bow wow will be the administrator of a recycled water permit. It forces us, doesn't force us. We'll be going through the Division of Drinking Water, getting a Title 22 report or permit from them. Then that will be forwarded to the wastewater folks at Lahontan. Then they will create a discharge permit with that included in it. It's a little, it sounds daunting. I think talking with the drinking water folks that it's not as bad as it's being made out to be, because the use of our water on land that will be restricted land to public use, all that stuff makes it pretty simple. The Title 22 is more geared towards a golf course that's receiving recycled water. So I think on the 8th of October, I have a meeting with the drinking water people, and I invited Jay to be part of that meeting so that we can all get on one page and get this thing out. So yeah, that was a long answer, but no, we don't get out of our respective agencies' permits yet.
I see.
It may be less.
Sure.
I will say.
I mean, it seems like each one of them should in principle, yeah, go down by some amount. But also the other thing that I would point out in these conversations with the Lahontan who's issuing the permits is that you can't just combine everything into one in one fell swoop. Have they never tried to do anything like that? And so it's incremental to get to that point. And they, as a regulatory agency, should know all about incremental steps for like delaying a bunch of the end goal. So
yeah, and I agree 100% with you, but it appears, and in 25 years that I've been dealing with them, is they don't understand the process. They only see it when it gets to them. It's like it magically just happens. It's like buying land from DWP. How come you haven't already bought it? You know, they don't understand. They just see the finished result usually, and then they take it from there, and they have no idea how long it takes to get there.
Right.
Interesting though.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I hope these numbers turn out to be somewhat of overestimates, and I'm glad that you're over budgeting as opposed to under budgeting at this state. at this phase, with the caveat that whatever, I mean, the reality is at some point we will end up using all of these monies for their relevant purposes. And if it's in the bank and it carries over into the next fiscal year, then that's the way it is. And I could see, like, with getting everything running, getting it all set up, why we would have a lot of upfront higher costs, which would then start plateauing in time. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, kind of, I'm on board with you, Stephen, but before I lose too many of my thoughts, got a number of comments, questions for Destin and all. Can hit on those. First of all, Destin, I don't know if it was just a mental slip, but you said on October 8th, you have a meeting with the drinking water folks. Is that correct? Because we have a meeting on October 8th with NRCS.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I think October 9th. I'm sorry. It's the next day. October 8th with NRCS is stuck in my mind. Yeah, it's the 9th.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure you didn't double commit yourself, and we're going to have to cover for you on one end or the other, but that's okay.
No, not at all. I'm glad you said that. I'm double checking my calendar right now, but I'm
Okay.
pretty sure it was the day after.
Okay.
Plus, I also kind of purposely tried to do that. I'd have a lot more information from our
Yep.
meeting with NRCS that might help with the drinking water people.
No, perfect. Good thinking. Okay, and then with regard to the permitting process and what you've just learned with working with Jay, yeah, I had to make a couple calls on the side recently. It didn't seem like our message was being absorbed by Jay, so I placed another call in the organization, and apparently that individual got Jay straight. So we're headed in the right direction. The recycled water permit being termed as such, although it may be a little bit of a hassle and conundrum getting into it in the beginning. However, there's more grant funding for recycled water if you're in that category. So they actually did us a favor by applying that terminology to our operation. Just treated effluent doesn't really ring any bells for the grant people, but recycled water, the funding is there if we could just latch on to it. So just a personal comment on that. Going back kind of to the beginning of the spreadsheet on some of the miscellaneous legal fees for startup, a question to the folks from the city of Bishop and a question in general. When do we want to start the time clock for these legal fees? I know that the district, and I'm sure the city, prior to the signing of our agreement, invested time and resources in some legal fees. I know that, we worked with Best and Krieger, and the district picked up on a lot of that. I want to be open-minded and just throw this out for discussion. Are we including in this $20,000, are we including some of the I'll call it pre-formation costs?
Legally, would we be able to do that, Ward?
Probably not. I mean, I would think that you'd need to just start paying, BAWA would need to start paying its bills, once it became, an entity. Whether the city and the district want to negotiate something, on the side, I think would be separate from what BAWA is paying for.
The Ward, you're saying that, but since July or whatever that date was when we both signed, that date going forward, the BAWA could be paying those bills though, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
Yes.
So any bills incurred after that point
Yeah, 'cause
definitely could fall into this budget.
At this point, we've had a couple, oh, I'm sorry, Stephen, I cut you
No,
off.
no, 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 please, go on.
At this point, we've actually incurred a couple, and the city's just been, well, the district paid the first one kind of by accident, and we took half of that. And then the last bill, city paid, and we're just billing the district for half. So we've kind of been doing that so far.
That works. It sounds like we have something workable. And in general, although I haven't looked at the dollars closely, I feel that the city has stepped up and offered resources, particularly along the lines of personnel support, that will probably balance some of the upfront legal fees that the district picked up on. So I think we have a fair working relationship, but I want to be right up front and give everybody an opportunity to identify anything that they think is out of proportion. But to me, it seems like we're balanced pretty closely. And that's all I want to achieve.
One question that I have that Walt, you just reminded me. Do we want at this point to include a line item for, say, grant writing purposes? Because you just mentioned that there are lots of grants out there for recycled water or whatever. If we want to make use of those, obviously, somebody needs to write a grant for it. And I don't know if this is what's getting lumped in with, Destin, had you envisioned that being lumped in administrative?
A little bit. I definitely lumped in because I thought there would be probably not a grant, but similar is the NRCS stuff, a lot of paperwork and stuff that's going to come with that. And I don't know how we do it, but grants, exactly. We happen to have Elaine Kabbalah, who's excellent at writing them. But if we could hire someone like her as the BAWA, separate from her city job, to do that for us. That's a good point. I didn't think about that part, Stephen. So good catch, though. I don't know what you all think about that. And I'm not saying that we have to do it or will even come up in the next 8 months or whatever, but it's something to think about.
It is. Good catch.
Yeah, I think maybe it would benefit us to just have a line in there for grant writing purposes. If anything, I mean, because I don't even know where to begin to identify these sorts of grants, and then
yeah.
So
it seems like IRWIMP might be a good starting point. I talked to Holly Alpert a bit, and we talked about some of the opportunities for WAWA, and I need to get some information in front of her so she clearly understands who we are, what we do, and so forth, and the opportunities. But I think recycled water might be a place to start a $1 investment up front through IRWIMP. But a line item for it, Stephen, seems appropriate. What do we think a good number is? 5,000 for starts, or?
I think that would be adequate. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it brings up the subject that we need to probably, as the BAWA, join the IRWIMP as an entity on its own. Then.
Yes.
And I would imagine that I already attend their meetings. They're not that often, but I could attend them as both sides, the city and the BAWA. Because you're right, Holly has a good handle on where money is and what's available.
Yeah. All right.
So does that include now a line for memberships or membership fees?
Actually, the IRWIMP basically doesn't have a set fee. There's a contribution if you can afford to or want to.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Both the city and the district contribute, so I think
it should be fine.
Yeah, we don't need to replicate contributions.
Right. Good point.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just wear one hat when I go to the meeting, so we don't have to pay twice.
Another item here, insurance. Destin, on your breakdown of it would be $31,000. Is that to cover all of the board members or just board members and participants from the city?
They're looking into covering all of the board members. So
Oh,
if we have to, it seemed like that was something that we're coming up a little, having a hard time finding it, unless you guys know something differently at the district level. But right now, the cities of Bishop's representatives are covered through the city of Bishop. But with the caveat that after having a deeper conversation with CJ, California Joint Powers, they said that this is starting, in their words, smell more of that the board can go out above and beyond whatever the city's doing. So they're kind of, we are our own entity. We're another form of government. So our insurance is starting to question if they can cover Stephen and Chris with the council coverage. And I think after listening to him, I don't think we will be able to.
okay.
So this will be a whole new errors and omissions for the entire board.
Got it. Got it. Jen, can you unmute and kind of brief everyone on what your experience has been trying to come up with insurance for the district board members?
We have found the same thing. Our insurance will not cover our board members for the JPA board. And they won't even give us a quote to cover as a separate policy our board members without having a budget and bylaws. So we're kind of in a holding pattern, and it sounds like having a policy individual to the BAWA for the E&O for the board members is the way to do it.
Jen, from what Destin said, should we at the district, or you, since you're taking the lead, should we be coordinating closely with the work that Destin is doing? Because it sounds like the path that Destin is on is going to get all the board members covered.
Yes, I agree. And Destin, if you need anything for that, let me know. And then if you want, I can still try to get a quote from our insurance company to cover BAWA members. But it seems like having a combined insurance policy would be the best way to go.
I would agree. And Ron Phillips has also reached out to a company that covered them, I think, in Utah. And so I have a lengthy application with them, but until we have a budget and all that, we really couldn't answer anything. So we'll get more than one quote, but I tend to, and I think I saw Ward shaking his head. It sounds like we need to have our own insurance, not half from one place, half from another, since we are another agency now.
Right, right.
And it sounded like, I'm waiting, there was one gentleman, I can't remember his name, I think it was Tom with CJPIA. He was gonna really work with me on the liability and the pollution part of it. You know, I think that those is the reason, and the only reason I'm saying, I think they're high numbers because they're gonna base it off our history. Neither entity has been fined. We haven't had violations. So, you know, that all those things come into play when they're doing it. And basically what that is it's going to be some liability insurance and pollution if our water gets off the property. It's pretty basic stuff, but each agency has it right now. So it's no reason to think we don't need to continue forward. And then, you know, then obviously we don't have workers' comp. We don't have any automobile, no property as in plants to cover. So hopefully this number gets shaved down.
Right.
Yeah. One of the things that Jen from the district has encountered through our sources is they wanted two key things, a budget and bylaws. Excuse me. When it comes to bylaws, I know we have an agreement in place, but Ward, is bylaws a separate effort that needs to be completed?
Yes, we're working on that. We're planning on bringing it into the October board meeting. And I've been working with Destin, you know, separately on different policies that we're going to group together, and it'll make up the bylaws.
Okay. Okay.
Ward, real quick, I guess I've meant to ask you earlier. So of the 20,000 startup, I can't remember, it was roughly 8,000 or something we billed to this point. Is that 20,000 including that we spent to this point?
Yes,
Perfect. So now we're looking at that there's about 12,000 more effort left to go.
okay.
I just want to clarify that in my own mind. You know, something I've just briefly just thought of that came to my mind is we talked about future capital and in that future capital was someday we're going to be saving up to build that new one plant someday.
Yep.
I didn't put a line item for that and I apologize, but maybe, I don't know that we have to put money to it right now, but should we put that as a line item with nothing there as just in good faith?
Ron Phillips, I'm going to throw that one in your direction. What do you think, Ron, from the city's perspective, if we're trying to, both the city and the district are trying to bank funding on an annual basis to prepare for that big expenditure? How would you like to have that dealt with?
I think it'd be a good idea at some point to put a line item in your BAWA budget and begin contributing equal amounts to that over time. Not all at once, but
Yeah, no, it's a big number all at once. I don't think either one of our agencies could quite deal with that, but it makes sense from what I hear you saying and what Destin has said. It makes a lot of sense to put that line item in there. And then for each agency, and we need to talk about what a reasonable number is on an annual basis. Okay. So Destin, is that a line item that you think should be incorporated in this proposed budget?
I would like to hear Stephen weigh in too, because he's super budget man, believe me. He's good at this.
I mean, I guess it depends on, I mean, it's hard when we don't actually have a good sense of how much any of that is going to be, right? And I think, what is it? We agreed in our formation documents that any expenditure greater than, I want to say it was like $5,000 or $10,000 has to go to the individual boards for approval anyway. So I think it's okay to include a line item in there for future purposes, for like the future purchases and everything. I just don't know what kind of a number to necessarily throw at that, because any number is going to kind of be meaningless at this point.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's why I suggested maybe just having a line item that said something like future capital investment. And then it just has a line, no dollar value by it yet, but it's a placeholder on there.
Although, come to think of that, maybe it is good to have a line item that talks about capital improvement funds. And we put a nominal amount there just to demonstrate that from the very beginning, we are working towards being in a sustainable position that like we can do a lot of the capital improvement. And then when we come back to the boards with a big purchase, we can be like, and we have this much in our capital improvement fund to already defray some of those costs, and that might look better. Who knows? The board members might take a look at that line and scoff, and we could be prepared. We should be prepared for that possibility. But yeah, I say include it.
Included on there. And, maybe it kind of reminds me, I put in professional services, irrigation design with no dollars. And that was just to try to remind me to ask the question, should we move that into capital and then
Yeah.
have, like you just said, Stephen, 10,000 maybe dollars there? Because things are going to come up that we're going to probably need to be able to spend money on.
Yeah. I
And
think
that'll
that's
save us from
reasonable.
doing that. Because I think what you said also reminded me that we aren't going to just all of a sudden put every half of $90,000 in a bank account. We'll probably put the legal fees and the insurance and maybe professional services, but the rest of it, we were going back and then asking our respective boards to make that contribution, large ones.
Right.
Right. And Destin, if you recall some of our conversations with Rob, it sounds as if through the NRCS program, which if we qualify and everything works, we may have some upfront costs, but they'll be reimbursed. So budgeting those amounts that would enable us to deal with those upfront expenditures, and then, you know, government reimbursement could take months. So having it there probably is wise.
Okay, so we'll move irrigation. We'll just, instead of calling it design, which sounds more professional service, we'll just call it irrigation, move it under future capital and put 10,000 on that line. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I think so.
Perfect.
So do we have any more to cover on there? 'Cause I think, yeah, good job, Destin, coming up with this stuff.
Yeah, excellent discussion. And Destin, thank you for getting a good start on this and leading us into this discussion. I think a lot of good thoughts came out. If we're all comfortable with where we're at, we can move past this. But Destin, if you have what you need to tie this up, ready to go.
Yep, I do. Thank you, guys. And like I said, there isn't much there, but there was a lot of time just trying to get any numbers there because nobody wants to really give you numbers. Ward's the only one that was offering.
All right. Thanks again for the discussion on that. I guess there's no formal action that needs to be taken other than direction to Destin to kind of finalize that. Well, is there formal action to approve the proposed budget? Question.
The CSD code says you may, so certainly it's your choice. I think it's a better practice to go ahead and take an action. But it's either when we come to adopting the final budget and we have to put out a notice, the notice has to include whether the board adopted a preliminary budget or whether the general manager, in this case, the administrator, has proposed a final budget. So either or is fine.
So thinking of that, Ward, with I think that, what was it? Was it 10 days notice in the newspaper?
Might be 2 weeks.
2 weeks, 10 days or 2 weeks. I'm
Yeah.
looking at the 12th of October would probably be the meeting that I would be able to take this to council. Because
Okay.
I would assume we'd want both of our boards to approve it before we advertise it, both of our council and board, I should say.
Yes.
You don't have to do the notice before you take it to your member agencies. You're just doing the notice before you bring it back to BAWA.
Yeah, and I understand. I was just thinking, so we have a October 12th council meeting and then I guess it would be October 20th. So I need to try to get this onto the next council meeting to get,
Yeah.
because I'm saying I'd like to have it approved by our council before we put it in the paper.
I think that's a good idea. Yes.
Okay. So I will get it onto next Monday's council meeting agenda. Do a quick staff report, another one for that.
I know that the district's next meeting is until the second Wednesday of October.
Right.
Yeah, you kind of got them in a tight spot too.
So that's the 14th. Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
If I could just make a suggestion, I'd suggest that the board adopt this as a preliminary budget just to cover our bases, particularly with the insurance companies that have been hesitant to give quotes without a budget. This way it makes it partially official.
good advice, Ron. I'd like to follow that too. And what I'd like to do is open up for a motion with respect to the proposed 2021 BAWA budget. Is there a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we accept the preliminary, the proposed preliminary budget with the modifications that were discussed, in particular with the capital improvement and grant writing line items.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Ron Stone, since you're the other board member here, can you unmute? And do we have anything from you with respect to the budget? And I don't know if it's appropriate, since Ron is not responding, I don't know if it's appropriate.
No,
Go ahead.
I'll second. Walt, you got me?
Yeah, we have a second from Ron.
We have a second from Ron.
They
All right.
unmuted for the
But,
vote.
Let me. I've been trying. Let me tell you guys, I'm having a hard time. Walt, I'm missing out about a fourth of what's going on. I apologize, but electronically I can't help it.
Yeah, I think you're just in a location where it's never going to get any better, Ron. So we'll need to discuss how you need to join these meetings in the future. Michelle, is it?
I agree.
Michelle, is it appropriate protocol in these Zoom meetings for you to take a roll, or do we not need to do that with Zoom?
I can take a roll.
Okay.
Okay. Stephen Mahoby,
Yes.
Ron Stone,
Yes.
Walt Pachuki,
Yes.
motion approved.
Thank you, Michelle.
So just so I'm clear, could we repeat that process again? So we're gonna, I followed that we're gonna approve the preliminary budget with the suggestions made today. And then we're going to, so fill me back in again on the dates on how we're gonna do advertise and then bring it to our respective board and council. If anybody remembers exactly. I think Ron had the idea.
Well, I think Ward was saying that the only advertisement done is for the BAWA board. So we can take it to our council and to the district board without advertising for their approval, and then the BAWA board can advertise for your next meeting, whenever that is. Is that right, Ward? Am I?
Yeah, and Destin, I don't think there's any way around the fact that you're probably going to have to put the notice in the newspaper before the district meets.
Yeah.
Just because the notice is in the paper doesn't commit, BAWA or the district. So I think you're just going to have no choice but to go ahead and do it that way, even though it's probably not ideal. We'd probably rather have the approval from each one of the boards first. But since, that's the schedule for when they meet.
Yeah.
I follow you. Okay, so and that makes sense. So we're just, it can go on our regular first October meeting. We'll just start the advertisement process ahead of that. Okay, I'm clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
While we're on that subject, what is the date of our next BAWA meeting in October?
20th.
October 20th.
Okay. Okay. Any further business with respect to the proposed budget? We have we've taken action. We've approved the proposed budget. And I think we know the direction with regard to putting notice in the paper. So like agenda item number 5 is complete. Agenda item number 6, Destin, do you want to take the lead on that one?
Sure. So as we've kind of been talking a lot about NRCS, in our meetings, we found out that after October 1, their fiscal year is October 1 through September 30th. We would like to get membership with the NRCS, fill out the applications, and be able to get right into where they'll start putting us in their budget for the 21-22 fiscal year, but we'll need to get going with them and start the process. And I wanted to bring this before you today to seek your approval for me as the administrator to sign on behalf of the BAWA for these applications and the process to get it started.
So, I mean, I think this item basically removes the necessity to have special meetings to be able to like sign these sorts of documents, and just streamlines the whole process. And the reality is anything that actually involves expenditure of money in a larger amount than whatever the amount is has to come to us anyway. So that wouldn't be included in any of this. So I think it's fine.
Ron Stone, are you trying to weigh in on that?
Well, I think it makes sense to giving the leeway to sign on our behalf any of these applications. Assuming I'm still online.
You are. That came through on our end pretty well, Ron. Thank you. It does make sense. It's an administrative thing, and I've been working a bit with Destin, and I recognize that there's going to be some paperwork up front, and it doesn't need to come before our entire board. Destin's judgment is trusted by the board, or else he wouldn't be the administrator. So I think we can give him direction to proceed and save us special meetings.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'll make a motion that we grant the authority to the administrator to sign NRCS application and miscellaneous forms.
We have a motion. Do we have a second from Ron Stone?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second.
Yes, we do. I'll second.
Michelle, would you please poll the board?
Stephen Mahovey,
Yes.
Ron Stone,
Aye.
Walt Pachuki,
Yes.
motion approved.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And Destin, thank you for just taking this and going with it. It's the way to do it. Tremendous opportunity there. I'm not sure if there's any way that Destin and I can entirely communicate to this board the tremendous opportunity that could be there if the pieces fall into place and so forth. But what that does in effect is it reduces the upfront work by Resource Concepts Incorporated, the consultant that the city and the district is sharing that effort now. And not only does the upfront work get reduced and handled through NRCS, but the installation of the irrigation system itself, which is lots of money. So we're looking forward to that being successful. We won't know until we give it a good try. So that's agenda item number 6. Agenda item number 7, staff and board reports.
In light of time, and I think that board member Mahovey has a meeting right at 9, so I've said everything I need to say for now.
Okay. Just real quick from me, one item we didn't cover today that I would like agendized for the next meeting is discussion about our board's position with regard to continuity of land use on the land to be transferred from DWP. We discussed it informally in the past, but given that DWP and the lessees will be in discussions anytime, there actually should have been by now, the lessees are very stressed about how BAWA is going to handle both leases. And I think if they have a statement from us that just states where we stand on this, that would be helpful. Ward, that throws something at you. Is that a position statement? And I don't want to take a lot of time now, but we may need, or I may need, or Dustin and I may need guidance on how to proceed with something of that nature.
Okay, we'll look into it.
Okay, thank you. So that's just for the next meeting. Anything further to be brought before the meeting?
I just have one question, and I guess maybe it's for Destin. So is wastewater 2 words or 1?
Yeah, thank you. Sometimes you see it in 2 and sometimes it's in 1. And I think we should call it 1. It makes BAWA shorter.
All right.
Stephen, I'll give you another answer to that. When I was working on the title of this way back in the day, I answered that question before I plugged it in. And there's, you might call it the Bible of wastewater treatment. I went to that to see how that Bible uses the term, and it was 1 word. So,
All right.
but Justin's right. You see it both ways. Either is acceptable. We simplified it like Justin said. So
Let's just do it 1 then. 1 word.
there you go.
But that's it. I don't have anything else.
Hans Stone, anything from you?
I lost you guys.
We'll take your silence as you have nothing further to cover in the meeting. Okay, so at this time, the time is 9:01. I'd like to adjourn this special meeting, and our next meeting will be October 20th at 8 a.m. And depending on conditions, we'll either do it remotely as we are today or otherwise. Thank you.
Cool. All right.
Thanks, you guys.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome, Ron.
Yeah.